Alright, I'm very sorry that I'm using my worst mic. I'm using my headset mic for this, but there are some things that have changed from what I've talked about in this video, like an F-15C has shot down the drone in which I will be talking about. Iran has also launched a new drone to monitor the carrier fleet, so some things might be changing when this video comes out, or some things have heavily changed when this video comes out. Nonetheless, I hope you enjoy the video. I'm sorry that it will be a little quiet, so enjoy what you can. Please subscribe, like, whatever, share the video. It helps a lot.
So today, I just wanted to rant a little bit. So, there's been a lot going on within the world, but I wanted to talk about the USS Abraham Lincoln specifically, because that has kind of got me a little upset with how it's being treated. People don't seem to remember how carrier groups work. Carrier groups have always been a bit of a strong point in a country's arsenal. The moment you have a carrier group, the moment you can control an area of the ocean. We figured this out years ago, like World War I, when everyone started to test if planes could sink ships, which is more of a post-World War I thing, but we used World War I weaponry because it's really all we had. World War II is when everyone started to use carriers. Anti-air started to become more viable with stuff like proximity shells, which we started arming boats with late 44 into 45. And then you had stuff like planes. We had fighters, we had carrier bombers, we had ground attack planes that could be launched off carriers. Now, with this, planes could intercept carrier groups a lot easier back in the day because we didn't have missiles, we didn't have CIWS phalanx systems. And because of that, carrier group warfare was very in your face, very up close, and very violent. That's why you always saw kamikazes, or you always saw bombs dropping on carriers or ships or missing, or torpedoes, because you had to get close. Those things changed around Vietnam and Korea when we finally started testing missile boats, and we started to finally arm planes with stuff like the AIM-9 and the Phoenixes. Once we started to figure out that conventional warfare was changing and became more missile-based, we didn't have to deal with planes or other boats. And that's what I think is super interesting, because we started to use our carrier groups farther out, because now we had jets like the F-14s and the F-15s that could go further. They could launch anti-ship missiles. They could go wherever the hell they want, really. So, carrier doctrine changed. And battleships had also already changed by this point of the F-14 existing. We didn't need them because carriers are now the primary of the fleet. Battleships are outdated because battleships fight each other. They are meant to be kind of close, if you consider 20 miles close. Which 20 miles would be about 1940 to 1945 era battleship duels. And that's kind of the issue. They're arming their own battleships, like the New Jersey, with weaponry to be modern, like the phalanx and even tomahawks. If you see the issue there, tomahawks can be fired from way out at sea and hit a ground target without the ship even being there. Anti-ship missiles are very much the same. So that's why battleships are no longer used, but carriers are. And that's why carriers are such a huge target now, is because their planes can go anywhere they want. They can carry any sort of weaponry they want, whether it be air-to-air missiles, air-to-ground missiles, bombs, glide bombs, smart bombs of any type realistically, such as like your JDAM. You've also got helicarriers, which we don't really use too much. We can launch helicopters off of different types of ships. We do use them. You don't see them a part of carrier groups too often though. So the issue with a carrier group comes down to one test that we did many years ago. I had a family friend who served on this ship, and honestly, hearing about it is kind of sad, I should say. The USS America. Most people know about it, most people don't. The aircraft carrier was supposed to be scrapped around 2004 to 2005, but then it was backtracked and chosen to be a live-fire test platform, meaning we'd shoot at it, we'd drop bombs on it, we would do everything we could to it to see what the damage is, if we can do anything about the damage for later ship designs, which I'll get into, and could we potentially upgrade the munition to be better at such a job later on. We deliberately sank the America, which had a lot of backlash because there was a bunch of crew members, like veterans of the USS America, and even people who weren't, like just civilians, who supported the ship and wanted it to become a museum ship. But that didn't go through, and ultimately it now rests. A lot of it's still classified, so finding what happened to it, specifically what munitions we used, is a little difficult, but with the time period it's kind of easy to tell what munitions could have been used. We had anti-ship missiles at the time. We had bombs at the time that could fight a carrier. I'm not one for naval stuff, so I don't fully know these myself, but I can easily tell you, this thing took weeks. And on just its bit you can find, it even mentions that. It took weeks to sink this thing. Approximately 4 weeks. We would hit it with anti-ship missiles, we would hit it with naval rounds, we would hit it with bombs. With these tests, we would slowly gather information, and we'd even use this information to go on to make the Gerald R. Ford series. The Gerald R. Ford is one of the best of the best. We used a lot of the USS America's live fire testing to arm the ship. Now, the difference between the Gerald R. Ford series and the current thing that we're talking about, the USS Abraham Lincoln, the Gerald R. Ford was built to withstand this, and the Abraham Lincoln is a Cold War ship that has been heavily redesigned over time, whether it be having better armaments, better planes, better radar, better you name it. Now, it was commissioned on the 11th of November 1989, but that doesn't mean it is susceptible to suicide drones like Iran thinks it can be. With the suicide drones we know they have, and they have shown off, like the drones that have appeared in Russia during the Russian-Ukraine war, we know these suicide drones are more developed towards destroying infrastructure, destroying convoys, and we know they're even used against infantry. The problem with that, since these things are basically giant flying bombs, you could kind of guess where HE, or high explosive, does not work against a carrier. Not to mention, a carrier group has at least one carrier, maybe 4 to 6 frigates, and upwards of 6 destroyers. Now, the issue with frigates and destroyers is they're lightly armed, but they have a huge benefit. Lots of anti-air. So if something small were to come into range, the phalanx system, a 20mm GAU, could open up and destroy whatever's in the way. It is a 20mm anti-air piece. It has a 20mm M61 Vulcan rotary cannon. It also has the nicknamed R2-D2 from Star Wars, and some people also call it a minion, which if I could find the photo, it'll be on screen. This thing is insane. It can have a rate of fire of 4,500 rounds per minute, which is 75 rounds per second. And the muzzle velocity is 3,600 feet per second. This thing can literally obliterate anything in its path. It's been used against missiles. If you can start to understand the issue here, frigates and destroyers and even carriers are armed to the teeth with these things. Carriers are even armed to the teeth with missiles, such as frigates and destroyers. I've seen some people say that it'd be a waste to use missiles on suicide drones, which, as much as it seems like it, it's the US Navy. They don't really care. They have a budget large enough to make literally a Death Star if they wanted to. That's hyperbole, but possible. Missiles are a first resort. They're long range. So if a suicide drone, and let's say these suicide drones are flying in low, they're flying fast, just to be able to get out of radar. But let's say they can fire missiles at them, because typically you can't. These radars on these ships are very powerful. So then you have at least 12, a sortie of 12, flying in. The missiles are going to do their job, no matter what. These things are proxy, just like any other missile since 1965. These missiles are going to destroy them. And because they're suicide drones, they're packed with explosive. You could probably get a chain reaction out of it and destroy the whole sortie. But let's say the missiles miss. That wouldn't happen, but let's say it does. So then now you have to deal with the close range munitions, the phalanxes. Now you have a huge issue of 75 rounds per second coming off of multiple ships at multiple angles, and basically what is R2-D2 with the smartest radar guidance system possible shooting at you. You can't really do anything about that at that point. The suicide drones would just get obliterated. let's say a few do get through. Let's say it's not possible. Let's say it's like 100 coming in from multiple angles. Then yeah, you might end up getting a few through. Less than a handful, probably. But let's say the USS Abraham Lincoln is hit. Well, it's an explosive, and you're dealing with a deck that's right about probably 2 to 3 feet thick, meant to withstand, like, you know, an F-15 landing at high speed. They're also meant to withstand things coming down on top of them, like missiles. Because, you know, you don't want a missile penetrating the deck, going straight through and exploding in the bay. We've kind of learned from World War II that that's a bad thing. The side of the ship also is heavily armored. You're looking at, you can't really find much of it on a lot of modern ships, but you're probably looking at 10 to 12 feet of armor, I'd at least say, on the sides of the ship alone, right about where the bay would be to hold all the ship munitions, the plane munitions, plane fuel, planes, and your people who work on them. So now you're dealing with a huge issue. What is an explosive going to do at that point? Now, if you do give it a heat warhead, that's cool. That is possible. Those do exist. The other issue, again, is what is it going to do? The heat warheads are meant to do stuff against armor. The issue there is the heat might get through, but not much. And it's really giving credence to the fact that it even could. Which, again, you have the phalanxes, you have the anti-air missiles being fired at this thing constantly from frigates, destroyers, the carrier itself. And that's not even crediting if you even launch planes in the first place, since a carrier's radar, let alone one that's hooked up or talking to other radars like the frigate or destroyer, they're going to see you coming in from maybe 50 miles away. Hell, if I remember right, a carrier group can see you coming from at least 150 at most, from what I remember. Again, I'm not a naval person, so that's not even crediting what planes get launched, which most modern carrier operations will be carrying F-18s and F-15s. If you catch the Marines, you might be facing an F-35. It's also not crediting the absolute craziness of the munitions held on these planes, like AIM-120s, AIM-9Xs. The AIM-9X can 360 so hard that if an F-18 were flying forward and there was an Su-57 right behind it at about a mile distance, it could lock the Su-57, fire the AIM-9X, it could do a full 360 and hit the
bingo
behind him. So you're dealing with a missile that is practically guided by the hand of God. Like, it is genuinely magic to me how the hell the thing even works. It is insane how we managed to come up with a thing that could just do that. So you're dealing with a missile that is way faster than most AIM-9s that have existed in the past. One that can turn and fight anything at any distance, any orientation. And then if you fire an AIM-120, it's similar to an AIM-9X. It has a really long range, it's really fast, but the issue is the AIM-120 doesn't turn, but it is self-guiding. So that's one of your huge issues. You just physically are not going to get any sort of a suicide drone sortie in and destroy a carrier. It's just not possible. If you wanted to destroy a carrier group, you need planes, real planes, with anti-ship missiles. And you'd want to destroy the destroyers and the frigates first. Again, those are carrying a ton of missiles and a ton of phalanxes all on their own. For some reason, Iran thinks they can scare the US right now with suicide drones to get us to back off, which it just isn't possible. The US Navy doesn't care. The moment one of their ships is hit, the Navy's gonna, if you've ever heard the term poking a hornet's nest, that's how you do that. You hit a ship in international waters with a drone. That's how you poke the hornet's nest. And I get it, no one likes us right now. That's not my place to talk, but I'm sure other countries would have a bit of an issue with that. Well, that's just my little bit of a rant video there for you. It's been bothering me what's been going on recently in regards to the Abraham Lincoln, and I felt like saying something about it. So I hope you have a good day. I hope that you can go on in your life feeling good, feeling great with everything that's been going on recently. Take care, and I'll see you later.